Welcome back to Reading Bear. Today, we will take a look at some new revenge stories. And if you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comments. Let's go!
The first one is titled, How I Got Revenge on My Realtor After I Was Tricked into a one-year buyer agency contract who had no intention of helping us buy a home. My husband and I met with the top realtor that a very popular agency had to offer. We saved for 2 years and we ready for a home. He was confident, encouraging, and made us feel like he could get us into our dream home. We reviewed financials with him and he saw we each had Tier 1 credit, both scores over 800, plus we had enough saved for a conventional loan. He was clearly so happy because he could smell the commission check. He brought out the contract. We discussed the buyer agency contract, which didn't seem like a big deal because we were very serious about buying. We also knew most realtors did this, so it wasn't alarming. In case you don't know, this contract is standardly a 3-month contract, stating that you will not buy, rent, lease any property without the realtor getting their fair commission. If you go behind their back with someone else, they will be entitled to a percentage of whatever property you purchase. The clause he failed to mention, we missed. This was a 1-year contract. We weren't worried at first, because again, we were sure to be buying a property. Let me tell you, when we told him the price range we were looking, about $150,000 under what the bank approved us for, he became completely upset and defensive. Why are you dropping your standards? Don't you have any dying relatives who could co-sign, so you can get the house paid off quicker? I don't want to show you houses in that area, etc. He saw that large commission check vanish before his eyes. We continued to stay in touch because what option did we have? We were contractually committed to buying a home through him and only him for the next year. We sent him links to many houses, asking when we can see them. He would take a week or 2 to respond back, and when my dream home slipped through my fingers due to his delays, I had enough. I politely asked if he would relinquish us from the contract, as we clearly had different goals. I apologized for being upset, but I told him why. I said I didn't feel like he was making us a priority and I would rather hire someone private. His response? Well, I'll be running your financials for the next year to see if you buy, lease, rent anything. I'd reread that contract you signed and find a lawyer. Then he cut communication. I complained to the agency and they said try and work it out with the realtor himself. When I told them I already tried, they brought up the contract. I said I was going to speak to a lawyer about the contract. They laughed and said good luck. The lawyer informed me it could drain our account going against the agency, and we made the painful decision to wait him out the full year, saving a lot more money in the meantime. The contract ends and we find our perfect first home, above the original price we were approved for, and with the most amazing realtors we have ever met. During closing day at the realtor's office, the sellers of our home used the popular agency we just escaped from. Our previous realtor watched in the hallway as we signed for a house almost $150,000 more than we would have bought from him. Exactly 1 month after our contract was up, he scrambled to find the now expired contract because he was sure that he was about to win. I know a lot of people at the office were talking about it and our realtors let us know what had happened after we left. It made me feel good to watch the horror on his face through the conference room windows as his superior told him to go home due to his frantic behavior. Apparently, he had been using company time and expenses to check on our financials weekly throughout the year in order to catch an easy check through a broken contract. There was no confrontation between us directly, but I definitely feel like we won that one. I looked on their company website and his name has been removed from their listed agents. The next one is titled, You Want to Cut Promised Bonuses from Employees? Expect Mutiny. In 2000, I was working for a financial firm, 1,800 employees, with a sales force of 200. I was one of the salesmen. We had our annual meeting in April. It was a big affair. Most of the employees attended, and the CEO gave a big speech about how the previous year was the best in the company's history, blah blah blah. The next month, May, we each submitted memos basically justifying why we qualified for, or should qualify for, bonuses at the end of June. Our compensation is based on a predetermined formula. You sell X amount, you get X bonus. You sell Y amount, you sell Y bonus. It wasn't one amount, it was set at different tiers. It was a predetermined formula in black and white. Everyone on the sales floor had a copy. If you didn't make your bonus, you knew exactly why, and by what amount you missed it. The company had been around over 30 years by then and was known for generous compensation and had never before played games with bonuses or payments. So I wrote out my memo, as per usual, explained the sales growth in my territory over the course of the previous 12 months, and what percentage my sales were out of last year's total sales. Coming off the company's best year ever, it should have been a slam dunk, right? All of us were excited about how much we'd have coming in June. June rolls around and my bonus is zero. But it's not just me. It's all over the sales floor. Less than 20% of the sales force got bonuses, and holy crap, everyone was upset. All the supervisors were dealing with angry subordinates, the sales manager was too, and even the VP and director above him. Everyone was furious and insubordinate, angry accusatory emails were flying, and the company was facing a mutiny. It got worse when it came out that the supervisors were offered bonuses that they could determine for themselves. Most of them took them, but a couple, knowing their subordinates wouldn't be getting anything, refused. My supervisor took his. When it came out, he tried to explain to his sales team about how he felt it was justified and how hard he worked. He ended up with people screaming at him about how they felt the same, but they didn't get jack crap. So for a week or so, things on the floor came to a stop. A lot of people just didn't show up, and the ones that did were angry. I came in and started reading Monster.com ads at my desk. I also stopped selling anything or answering my phone. When confronted by my boss, I told him that as soon as I got the bonus my sales justified, I'd start working again. Until then I'd be coming in late, reading and responding to want ads, and leaving early. He could expect me to keep that up until I found another job or was fired. The following day I was sent to the regional sales manager's office. She said she'd heard about my work stoppage and asked me to explain myself. I told her that if she heard about it from my supervisor, then she already knew why I wasn't working and I didn't need to explain it again. She tried buddying up to me, being friendly, then being stern, then being angry. I kept my composure and told her that the longer the company held out on my bonus, the longer it was going to miss out on sales from my territory. I then gave her my average daily amount of sales from the previous year, quantified what the total loss would be for a week of me not selling, and how much cheaper it would be just to pay me the money I was owed and get me back to selling. Then I thanked her for her time and told her I'd be leaving work as soon as I left her office. And I did. The following day I came in, checked my emails, some of which were farewell emails from coworkers who quit over their stolen bonuses, and sat on Monster.com until I was told to go to the office of the national sales manager. He's the gatekeeper, he's in charge of all 200 of us. He told me he understood that I was upset, and could see why. I asked him if withholding the bonuses from 80% of his sales force was his idea or someone else's. He didn't answer. He did tell me that I would be getting a check on Monday, and could I please go back to work now? I told him I'd be going back to my desk, but work wouldn't start until the check was in my hand. When I went back and checked my emails, yup, more defections. The next day an email went out to the entire sales force. Management had taken a look at the numbers, re-evaluated the financials, and determined that June bonuses would be issued shortly. The email also apologized for the delay and reminded us that as salesmen, we were the core of the company and our hard work was appreciated. I also received another email, this time from the national sales manager, who told me while bonuses were scheduled for Monday, he'd be walking my check to my desk the following day. The following day I showed up, sat down, and shortly afterward the national sales manager walked on up and handed me my bonus check. I thanked him and handed him my resignation effective immediately. In my resignation letter, I requested that a check for my unused vacation time please be cut and given to me before I left the building. When he finished reading it I told him I'd clean out my desk while I waited for the vacation check. While I was doing that, one of my coworkers also resigned effective immediately. We were walked out at the same time and ended up getting drunk at the bar across the street. I learned later from coworkers that remained that even though the company issued the bonuses, they lost about 20% of the sales force in the following 2 months. The next one is titled, "Don't Mess the Sweet Old Lady's Cat When the Neighborhood Has a Kid Who Knows Everyone." A little about me first. I was a scrapper as a kid and knew everyone in the neighborhood. I made money babysitting kids and knew the older kids because I was permitted to roam. I am also one of those people that people will tell their darkest secrets to, and I had earned a lot of trust in my neighborhood. I was a pack leader and people generally did what I said. Okay, enough about me, on to the revenge. This is an old story, back from I was young. I can't remember the exact age, but it was around 9 or 10, which would be the early 90s. I lived in a small neighborhood. There were not many kids, and the ones there were mostly older, teens. The brunt of the community was older people. The neighborhood was built in the early 40s and filled up with people after World War II, and many of them stayed there. On the block south of me was this old butthole, who pretty much hated everyone. If something that was a kid's, like a ball or a frisbee, and the kid asked for it back, he would destroy it right in front of them. One time a kid parked his bike in the swale, city-owned property that was outside the home, and this butthole took the bike and destroyed it. This idiot has a major vendetta against cats. We did not have a feral cat problem, but many people, including my own, had cats that were indoor, outdoor. We were not on the main road, and there was little traffic. Most of the cats didn't go far from home, usually just went out chasing pigeons and the few garter snakes that were around. They always came home at night unless they ended up in this butthole's yard. He started by trapping cats and taking them to the pound. Many families in the neighborhood would get calls about their cats being turned in and having to get them. My family, who were well known at the pound, my mother was an animal lover, to an annoying extent, and we were there often, would get calls to inform us that one of our cats was there. When Butthole found out that trapping cats wasn't getting rid of them is when he escalated. He started poisoning them, but many lived because the symptoms were caught early enough. He was using antifreeze, so he escalated again, and that is when crap got serious. Suddenly cats all over the neighborhood were dying, and no one could figure out why. It wasn't until the cat of a sweet old lady got out of the house. She was indoor only but got out during a package delivery. 3 days later, the cat showed back up sick and dying. This woman was not poor, and this was a costly cat, Angora, I think, maybe Persian. It was a white fluffball, and this woman loved that cat. She took the cat to the vet, and it was determined that the cat had a belly filled with glass shards. But the damage was too massive, and the cat died while at the vet's office. This woman was furious. This got around to the neighborhood, and it was me who told me that I thought I knew who did it. I thought this because since my mum and I were frequent visitors to the pound, they said my mother who it was that kept bringing our cats, and with a little prodding, we found that all the cats that came from our neighborhood were brought in by the same person. I told this wonderful older woman who I thought did it, and she was a pistol. She got in her caddy and rolled up to this butthole's house and confronted him. I was a bit of a free roam kid back then, had to be home by the time the streetlights came on, so I made sure to ride my bike over to see what the fireworks would be like. She rolled up and pulled in his driveway, got out of the car and pounded on his door. I mean pounded. Butthole opens the door and she begins softly, saying that something terrible had happened to her cat and that she was just going door to door trying to find out if anyone knew what happened. Butthole responded with a "I don't know" reaction. I wasn't close enough to hear everything that was said because of this butthole's hatred of children, but I was close enough to hear what happened next. Sweet old lady went from 0 to which in 0. 1 second. She poked her finger in his chest and said, "I think it was you, you craggy son of a witch. I know that you have been taking cats to the pound, and I bet you are the one that killed my princess." Yeah, that was the cat's name. This butthole just smirked and said, "Yeah, glass in cat food, and some catnip will always work to get those destructive beasts out of the neighborhood. I will keep on doing it, and you can do nothing to stop me." Sweet old lady hauled and slapped this butthole across the face and turned around and walked back to her car. I was good friends with sweet old lady and often spent time at her house after school because she was alone and needed some company. She was always very kind to me. When I went over next, I asked what happened after she left. She told me she called the cops, but without concrete proof, there was nothing that they could do. When they spoke with the butthole, he admitted trapping cats and taking to the pound, but never said anything about the glass. Sweet old lady was beside herself because she wanted justice for Princess. I got an evil grin, my face, and said, "Don't worry, you'll get justice." She looked at me and smiled and nodded her head. You see, this all happened in the first part of October. I knew just about every kid and teen in the neighborhood free roam thing, and I told all of them what happened. The total was about 20 kids, teens that I said, with about 12 of them being teens who could drive and had their incomes. I told them all that I thought we should do. I laid out the entire plot, and we all worked to get the things that we needed. When Halloween rolled around, I was unfortunately not able to fully participate in this because I sadly got grounded for getting into a fight with a boy in the neighborhood. I broke his nose, but he grabbed my tit. I was an early bloomer. I wasn't going to stand for that. Still, I did find out about the aftermath. Halloween night, about 15 people late in the night converged on Butthole's house. As luck would have it, he was not home at the time. His car was still there, but a neighbor relayed to the group that he had left in a car with someone else. The group shattered every window and mirror in his car. Once the windows were broken, they opened the door and destroyed the interior. They poured sand in the gas tank and did something to the engine block, don't remember what. They broke every window in the house, including a sliding glass door in his backyard. All screens were shredded, and they put superglue in all the door locks and superglued the mailbox shut. Once the screen was torn, they gained entry. They did not steal anything, but they destroyed the inside of his house. They spray-painted everything, includes the words, "For Princess," on a wall inside the home. Polaroids were taken, and I got to see the destruction. They also, just to put the cherry on top, eggs and TPED the place. This, from what I was told, took about 3 hours in total, and neither the neighbor next to him or across the street said a damn thing or called the cops. The group left and went back to their homes like it was just a typical Halloween night. I found out from the neighbors, I was very well known in my neighborhood, and people tended to tell me things with ease, that the total amount of damage was around $20,000. This was 1990-91, so a duck ton of money, and it seems that the group destroyed some very precious things that he had. Now, the one thing that they did that I am not proud of, if they dumped the urn that contained his late wife's ashes. I think that this was a dick move, but I still believe that he deserved it. This butthole was furious, but no one saw a damn thing. It took him about a year to get everything fixed. He told the neighbor that his car insurance would not cover the damage to the car, and he had to buy a new car, and the car was one of those old Lincoln Land boats that probably add another $15-20K onto the total. Police were called, but there was nothing found. This was before DNA and all the fancy CSI crap, so it was pretty dust for Prince and be on their merry way. He tried to go after sweet old lady, but it fizzled. There was no proof she had anything to do with it. The great thing about all this, there was never another cat that vanished from the area. The butthole died about a year before I left the neighborhood at 18. From what I heard from a neighbor, he was raging about what happened to anyone who listens. Once I was able to roam again, I was able to get the Polaroids from a friend who gave them to my mum in a sealed envelope. I went to sweet old lady and showed her the pics. She just smiled and gave me $20. She lived for another 3 years. She was wonderful during that time. I wish I still had the Polaroids, but they were lost when I got kicked out of an apartment due to my butthole ex, but that is a story for another sub. The last one is titled, "Mike Finds a Way to Get Rid of Problem Employee." The revenge wasn't mine, but I figured I'd share as I was witness to the beginning. Certain names and details changed to protect the guilty. Background: years back I worked for a large bank in the UK. We all worked on the same floor and in the same department but within different teams. I was just passing through on a secondment and saw the beginning of this revenge but was filled in on the aftermath later. One of the teams was run by a woman called Sarah. Sarah was by many measures a good manager, but she had a blind spot. That blind spot was a woman called Helen. Now, when I was in my previous role, I interacted with Helen a fair bit and she had seemed friendly, but when it came to actually working with her, she was a nightmare. She'd tattle, steal ideas and credit, and generally throw you under the bus at any opportunity. I'm not sure why Sarah always protected her, but it soon became a sore point for most people on the floor who had to deal with her. Enter Mike, who was the manager of a smaller team. Mike could be a bit of an idiot but was still professional and fun to work with. To give you an idea of his character, I found out I was being made redundant, and even though he wasn't my manager, he heard about it and booked time out to help me with my CV and do interview practice. Shortly after, it was announced that Mike's smaller team was being dissolved and the staff either made redundant or moved to other teams. At the time of the cuts, the economy in the UK was in a bad state and all the banks were looking for efficiencies. He was redeployed and took the vacant manager role under Sarah that Helen had been gunning for. To make matters worse, Helen now reported directly to him. Helen was furious and spent no time in making her discontent known, as she felt she was entitled to the promotion. Unfortunately for her, Mike was wise to her. They'd both joined the company around the same time, and so he knew exactly what she was like. He'd even had her blame him for her mistakes before. Shit, even the projects she'd gotten so much praise for had been work one of his staff had done. So he started the process of documenting her poor work and attitude to manage her out of the business. Sarah, however, would not allow it. Helen was a high performer in her eyes and she wouldn't sign off on him getting rid of her. When I left the team, Mike was frustrated with her and wasn't sure what to do. The revenge, I met up with Mike a year later and he shared how he'd solved the Helen problem with me because he knew all of the issues I'd had with her. Because Sarah had his hands tied, his only other option to get Helen out of the team was for her to leave of her own accord. He couldn't oust her by making her life difficult or she'd go to Sarah, so he went the other way. The idiot sat through every performance meeting with her for the rest of the year, gritting his teeth and praising her. That then justified him giving her a really high performance rating. He also used his own contacts to find roles in other teams at his grade that he then talked up to Helen. These roles were specifically selected because they specialized in one of the things Helen claimed she was an expert at, but had very little real experience in. Basically roles where he knew she'd have the highest chance of shitting the bed. Eventually she applied for one and he spent several weeks coaching her for the interview. In the company at the time, the interviews were scored off of 3 main factors: performance rating in current role, competency-based interview results, relevant experience. He'd done everything he could to make her shine in all 3. She took the promotion and within 2 months had quit the bank. He knew she wasn't ready for the responsibility, didn't have the skills, and her poor work ethic would be exposed. Worst case, she'd get her shit together and he'd still look like the perfect manager to Sarah. Thanks for listening.